So England are into the 2025 Women's Euros final. It doesn't quite feel believable. A game of football against Italy which was so unconvincing, but ultimately all that matters at the end of the day is the result. And England win the match 2-1. In this video we're going to break down the game. We're going to look at what Italy did very successfully, why ultimately England were able to come back, and whether England deserved to win, and what they need to do now heading into a final against Spain or Germany. And let's start by discussing the first 45 minutes. I feel that a lot of people are brandishing this game as the same brush that they spoke about the England-Sweden game as, where I think they have two very different matches. The Sweden game, England were incredibly poor. Sweden were the dominant force. They were able to turn the ball over so successfully. And England couldn't even get forwards, let alone create chances. I think the difference in this game was England dominated the ball, dominated in terms of pitch tilt. They were high up the field for large parts of the game. They just couldn't quite get that finishing touch. And then Italy countered successfully. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, 100%. I think the first 90 minutes, but especially that first 45, played out exactly what we expected. England to have all the ball, be high up the pitch, be the side on top. But Italy were going to defend in a low block. They were going to sit deep. But then when they got the opportunity to turn the ball over, they would spring forward on the counter-attack with pace and with numbers. That's exactly what we knew was going to happen going into the game. It's the way both sides want to play. And with Italy going as the underdogs, we knew they were going to come in, defend well, and be that counter threat. So we knew that was going to happen. And it's one of those where, that game England could have easily got a goal at half-time or before in that first half and been 1-2 up at half-time. But it just didn't fall right. And then when Italy got their chance, they put it in the back of the net. At the time of scoring, it was Italy's first shot of the game. And that was, we played over half an hour then. And that summed up the match. It's exactly what the game plan were from both sides. The difference is that England didn't really penetrate enough and couldn't get through the Italy defence. And then when Italy turned the ball over, they were clinical. And at the end of the day, credit to them. Bonansea got one chance, and it was a really good finish. And that is football at the end of the day. We knew that was how it was going to play out. It just needed to be more clinical from England. England had to move the ball a little bit. It was too slow in the first half. It was a little bit too passive. You've got to be direct. And I think Lauren Hemp was the only player in that first half who was direct. Only player running at people and trying to take defenders on. You've got to be direct when you're playing against a low block because you've got to try and find a way to break them down. And England were just too slow and a little bit sloppy in the first half. But you're right, it wasn't like a terrible first half where England were rubbish and Italy ran all over them. It didn't play out like that. England did have the ball, they moved it well, but once they got into the final third, it just broke down and it wasn't being moved quick enough. And Italy would turn it over and punish with the pace it got in behind. So it definitely was. It played out how we expected in the first half. Second half, it got better for England, but I think it's one of those games where we knew it was going to be close. We said this before. We knew this game was going to be a tight one. And I think Italy proved that across the board. I think they did very well. Yeah. And they'll be frustrated. But I thought first half, Italy executed their game plan absolutely superbly.
Yeah, they did. They executed it for 90 minutes. It's just England overpowered them at the end of the game. I think what we saw, and this is the big difference, I think, between the Sweden and the Italy games. In the Sweden game, England never looked like scoring. They kept trying to play out from the back. It wasn't really working. Tried to go long. That didn't work either. Nothing in terms of the build-up pattern for England or any support, any of the play for England was working. In this game, England played out rather successfully, were able to get into Italy's third and then struggled to break down that Italian low block. Only one shot on target, I believe, in the first 45 minutes, perhaps two, but it wasn't a first half where England were able to create chances of any quality. And then Italy stung on the counter-attack. It was a really good counter-attack breaking down the right-hand side, but it's just a catalogue of English defensive errors that cause it, because you see Greenwood just needs to deal with Cantore, doesn't. Cantore skips past her like it's no problem. Plays a 1-2. Morgan rushes across to try and deal with her. She goes in too rash. Gets nowhere near the ball or the player, so she just bursts past her too. Then the ball comes across the opponent area, and Leah Williamson, I cannot understand the defending. I just can't understand, because it's coming right towards her. And what she's aiming to do is predict the ball going to Girelli and jump in front of it. But she jumps in front of Girelli, and the ball just goes past both of them instead. And then it falls, obviously, at the back post. Bronze tries to get a flick away to take it away from Bonansea. Probably puts it into the path of Bonansea, and for the second time at this tournament, inadvertently gives the winger a chance to score. and Bolan Sam makes no mistake lashing it home. But it's one of those where what Italy did really well in this game was transition really effectively from not being able to, or looking like they're just clinging on, heading the ball out, getting in front of the shots, being able to hold their defensive structure well, to suddenly springing forwards, and that caught England out. And we saw in the France game England dealing with transitions really poorly. We saw in the France game England defending the box really poorly, and we saw those same issues crop up here. I mean, even the Wales game, we saw England defend a transition poorly. Sweden game, probably the best example. 2 transitional moments. So we've seen England's weakness exposed a few times now. The difference, I think, looking forwards to the final on that, and obviously we'll get back to the rest of the game in a moment, but the difference, I think, looking towards the final is that Spain, if they are there, aren't going to play deep and then look to transition. Germany, we really don't know because they've used so many different shapes and systems at this tournament, and it's been a weird one for them. But they could look to be more transitional, which I think would be a worry for England. But I think now, because they're now playing the strong opposition, it's not such a concern. But the way that England have played this tournament has been really poor. And so I would be concerned looking at that final because I don't think we've been able to show that quality. Let's move into the second half then. We saw a change at half time. I don't think we'd have ever seen this change if Lauren James wasn't injured. Despite the fact we probably should have. James, I think, was clearly quite obviously struggling in that first half. Didn't look free of movement. Didn't look like she could really have an impact on the game.
Yeah, just didn't get into it. That's the thing. I think England overall are some brilliant big game players, but only if they get into the game. And I think in that first half, Toone, James just didn't really seem to get involved. And I thought bringing on Mead was obviously probably forced through James's injury. But again, I spoke about the directness from Hemp, and I thought Mead brought a little bit more of that. Yeah, I was actually really impressed with Beth Mead. I think my biggest criticism of her has been her decision making and sometimes over the last season she's just taken too long to do things. But I thought when she came on, she looked really sharp and was just really quick, lively, direct. And when you and it changed the game. I thought that it too England changed. Bringing Morgan from the off, it looked much more comfortable and England looked more solid. And I thought Mead at half time just brought directness, and it meant that England were being direct from both wings with Hemp and Mead. And I think that second half was very different, and this was what despite a bit of a scrappy result, which was much more because it was one-way traffic. I think bar the double save from Hampton from that Italy corner, which was pretty late on, England had a lot of control in that second half. They put a lot more pressure onto the Italy penalty area, and they were recycling the ball. Rather than crossing it in, the ball getting cleared and Italy breaking away, the ball would go in, it'd get cleared, but England would win it back again and then recycle it and create another opportunity from it. And I thought that was much better from England to keep the ball. That's exactly what you've got to do. When you're up against a defensive side, you have to keep the ball alive. You have to keep that pressure almost constantly. And I thought England did much better with that in the second half. And it did start to shift into that kind of when rather than if period where we thought England can get a goal. And I thought for the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, England were brilliant, looked in great shape, and the goal felt like it was coming. And then it's one of those in football where England still played well, but as you get towards 70, 80 minutes, you just start to worry a little bit. Obviously, we saw Kelly, Agyemang, Beaver Jones come on. Absolutely brilliant. I'll speak about directness. Kelly came on and was just causing havoc on that right-hand side. Agyemang did really well. And the subs were coming on. England was still getting scrappy chances, but there wasn't anything clear-cut. And I mean, better late than never. Michel Agyemang steps up with a minute on the clock. And I mean, just incredible. I mean, it was Kelly, brilliance to create the chance, puts the ball in. Mead does well to challenge, and Giuliani makes a meal of it. But Agyemang, talk about conviction, and it's just no nonsense centre forward play. It was really good to see. Rolled back a few years rather than trying to score a worldy goal or cute finish or do something smart with it. Just absolutely smashes it low, hard, laces through the ball, and puts it in the goal. That's all it took for England. And yes, it was late, but I do think that the way England played in the second half, you felt a goal was coming, and I thought the goal was it was a good reward because it was a sustained 45 minutes of pressure for England. Yes, the goal came in the 96th minute, and people look at that as a little bit lucky, but that goal could have easily come 10 minutes beforehand, then suddenly it doesn't look as, it's not as dramatic, and it's, Peter wouldn't view it as fortunately.
Yeah, and let's discuss why the subs are so effective then, because that is the big question of the video. Looking at how England want to play at this tournament, a lot of it's been about getting the ball out wide, and what we thought it would be was trying to then create chances centrally with runners in the half spaces and options in deep that could play passes forwards. It's not really been that way. It's just been putting balls into the box fairly aimlessly. And the problem with that is that with Russo up there, with Toon as an attack midfielder, you don't have a lot of box presence there. What we saw when Aguiman comes onto the field is someone who's able to challenge and be physically dominant and imperious in the penalty area and latch onto those loose balls and get shots away. There was one chance in the first half Alessia Russo had where she received the ball there back to goal, tries to turn and just hits a shot. She never looked convinced. She didn't strike it with conviction. She never looked like she believed in the opportunity. When Aguiman receives that ball, and it's a difficult one to bring down and get the subsequent shot away, but she does well. She brings it down, as you say, just drills it home. That was a big difference in the profile of player that you need in that sort of position. And again, it comes from Mead playing as one of the three forwards because she makes a run towards the goalkeeper, which then forces the mistake out of Giuliani, which is why she parries the ball away because she panics. She can't read the flight of the ball. That doesn't come if no one makes that run. I don't think anyone who was on the field in the first half makes that same run. It drops then to Aguiman, who's in the perfect position. And that box presence is just so important. And we saw it continue then into extra time because England could put the ball into the box and have someone that was challenging for it. So if England are looking just to swing crosses into the box, I've seen people say, oh, maybe Aguiman should start, but no, we couldn't possibly do that because Russo's Russo. But it very much depends how England want to play. But if they're just going to stick crosses in the box, Alessia Russo's a waste of time because she doesn't win headers as effectively as someone like Michelle Aguiman does. So that's got to be a real question, but I don't know why the only way that England want to play at this tournament is to cross the ball. We've seen some pretty poor crosses, and I think that was a big problem in the first half, which is these looping crosses over the top. What we saw once Chloe Kelly came on was someone that was able to deliver a cross with a lot of quality, and I think that changed the game. Again, we saw that in the Sweden game, we saw it in the Italy game. Suddenly the balls in the box started to become a lot more dangerous, suddenly the corners were a lot more dangerous, and England were able to threaten. Obviously then getting over the line, getting into extra time. I think from that moment, a lot of England fans would have believed, again, in England, that moment of Aguiman scoring and putting England into a great position. I think from there, it always felt like England would be able to go on and get the win from there.
Yeah, 100%. It was this extra time was forced in terms of both sides were forced to play certain ways because of a couple of factors. You had, first of all, the emotional side of it. England had all the momentum, really positive. Everyone was buzzing. Great goal, just equalising in the last minute. Now we're off to extra time to go win it. While Italy, they were really struggling. It was a big blow for them. They were a minute away from a European Championship final. And then to have to reset and go again for another half an hour is a very difficult thing to do. And I think that, the players on the bench were starting to get ready to run on and celebrate. And Italy felt like they were nearly over the line and then it was gone in an instant. And that is a very hard mental, to have the mental capacity to get out of that mindset of we're nearly there and go into another 30 minutes extra time when you are already under pressure and struggling is very difficult. And of course the subs. Again, England had five or six attackers on the pitch. Italy had gone defensive. So in that extra time, England went for the game because they had all the attackers and they wanted to get the job done in that 30 minutes. Italy were just hoping for penalties. They didn't come forward once in that extra time period. There was one actually where Caruso drove forwards and then just tried to shoot from 30 yards and went out for a goal kick. But it's the problem. It's the harsh reality of when you concede such a late equaliser. Is because you throw defenders on, because you take time out of the game, and because you think you're almost there. It then puts you in a massive disadvantage into extra time, and it just didn't. Again, England did very well in extra time to keep the pressure on and eventually work that goal. Italy, though, they were so close, and you feel a little bit for them because they battled hard, they played well, they defended superbly, but even as you knew, as soon as we entered extra time, they were up against it. And again, England did have 30 minutes to score, but decided to wait until the very last minute of extra time to get that winner in very unconvincing circumstances. But The ball was in the net, and that at the end of the day, that's what counts in football. And again, it was the 30 minutes where England were on top. It's just that the goal came very late on.
Yeah, I thought first half of extra time, just to pull it back a lot there. The first half of extra time, neither side really went for the game. I thought, the classic sort of signs of lethargia. But what we saw as it moved into the second half was a really good change from Wiegman. And again, we speak about these substitutions being so important for England. And what she did was she took Kira Walsh off and brought on Grace Clinton. And that's smart because if we did go into penalties, that's a stronger penalty taker, though that didn't show against Sweden. But in theory, it's a stronger penalty taker. And what we saw was England start to move the ball forwards quicker. Clinton's a better carrier, a better progressive passer than Walsh. And so England stopped focusing on circulating the ball and instead focused on moving that ball forwards. And I thought we saw England suddenly change and try and go forwards, and the ball was getting into the box more. And ultimately, that's what led to the ball going into the penalty area, Severini pulling down Beth Mead. I've seen people online try and say that's not a penalty. I'm not sure on what universe they're living. I think, if you remove any Barcelona situation, there's no way that's not a penalty. Severini doesn't play the ball whatsoever and pulls down Beth Mead. It's that classic sort of extra time mistake where you're tired, you've been under it there for 15 minutes in that second half of extra time, and she just makes a really stupid mistake, and I'm sure she'll be kicking herself for it, now the morning after. But yeah, it's one of those stuff like that happens in football. I feel for Severini. I don't think she meant to foul Beth Mead, just reacted poorly. But yeah, not a great penalty from Kelly, but she did do well then to tuck in the rebounds, and England squeezing, I think is probably the right word, into a European Championships final. It's another year though, England's not convincing, but they're into a final.
Yeah, it's the England way to do things, men's, women's, youth football, it doesn't matter. England don't do things the simple way. I don't know why they make it so difficult for themselves. But yeah, England found a way, as you say. It's unfortunate to see the semi-final decided by a penalty rebound, a law which they are looking to get rid of in a couple of years' time. But I think that it was a difficult one to take for Italy. I thought, again, England, the goal was coming. I thought Italy reacted really poorly. And as you say, I thought the reaction to the penalty we given was everyone lost their heads for Italy. On the sideline, on the pitch, everyone lost their heads. I think the reaction from the players after the penalty was given was really poor. And to be honest, a referee with a bit harsher discipline probably would have booked 3 or 4 players there, because the way they crowded the referee and were shouting in her face, you can't react like that on a football pitch. I thought Sonchin, brilliant manager. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching him on the sidelines this tournament. He's a great character, but the way that he tried to storm off before the game was over was really poor. And I thought his coaches did well to tell him, what are you doing? Get back on the touchline. I'm not really sure where he was going or what he was doing. But again, I think he lost his head. And it was just a mess from Italy. I thought it's a shame, because I thought they slightly tarnished what had been a really resolute performance by just losing their discipline towards the end of the game. They did calm down though, and obviously Sonchin came back and shook everyone's hands, but it is a difficult one to take. Understandably, they were frustrated because it was a horrible, horrible way to lose. To be in the position they were in, it's a horrible way to lose a semi-final. But that's football. Sometimes it's a difficult sport, and I think they will wake up this morning and they will realise how well they did this tournament to get to the final 4, to take the challenge to the reigning champions like they did, to be a minute away from the final. It is heartbreaking, but I think they've also got to look back on it with pride. It was a really big tournament for Italy, and hopefully they've done a lot in terms of the Italian football landscape. But for England, they push on, and football's one game away from coming home, and I tell you what, I didn't think we'd be saying that after 70 minutes in that Sweden game.
Or in the France game.
No.
Or any point in this tournament. It's not been a convincing one. I want to speak about the mentality buzzword, and I know people won't like hearing that because I think it is over-amplified in the English media. It's every headline. England's mentality sees them through. But I think we did see the character of England and Italy tested here, and England kept going until the 90th minute. That's why they were ordered with that opportunity to score, and they took that really well. And what we saw on the flip side was Italy, who were so, as you say, resolute defensively for 94 minutes. They fell apart at the end there, just giving the opportunity to England. And then into extra time, we saw that emotional side of the game really come out. And I don't think the players or the coaches, And it makes sense. They're not experienced. They're not players and coaches who've been at this level of the competition before. And we saw them struggle to come back from that. What they needed was a reset to neutral. Instead, it seemed very emotional, and they never really got out of the headspace of the frustration of conceding so late. So we saw here, that experience pay off for England, a side who've been here, done it before, a manager who's now been in 5 successive major international finals. It's a ridiculous record for Sarina Wiegman, placing her up there as one of the best managers of all time. I think it's a shame she hasn't been as successful as she would have wanted in those finals, obviously losing both World Cups, but if she can go back to back to back in the European Championships, that would cement her legacy, really, as one of the greats. But I think England now with a great opportunity. It's going to be a really interesting game either way. I think it's going to be a very different game based on whether it's Spain or Germany. Obviously, we'll find out this evening, or if you're watching later, you will know by now. But yeah, I think either way, it's going to be a very fascinating game when we get around to Sunday. That, though, is everything from us today. If you're watching on the day of release, then join us this evening because we'll be live from 8:15 as Germany take on Spain. That's going to be a very good one. If you're watching afterwards, well, join us for the final. England taking on either Germany or Spain. And if you're looking out for something to watch tomorrow, we'll be back with another analysis as we break down that Germany-Spain game. So lots of coverage about Germany and Spain, basically. Go and watch that if you're loving this Euros content. That, though, is everything from us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.